Welcome back for another week of Political Breakfast. We are so glad that you're here. We appreciate our listeners, and we have so many loyal ones. So thanks for checking in again right here on WABE. With me, of course, is our Republican strategist, Brian Robinson. Tharon's still off this week, but we have our ride or die, Saba from the Atlanta Civic Circle filling in today. So welcome to both of you. Hello, hello. Another happy Monday.
Happy Monday. Hope everybody had a great Easter.
But a sad Monday because Pope Francis passed away. So
yeah. And that was
really
something to see him, to do the Easter services. And then just overnight, the story breaks that he passed away. And it had been in ill health. So people had been expecting it. But I don't think this soon after, seeing him on the Easter circuit again.
He packed a lot in there in his final few hours of life. We hear a lot about folks who are living for something. And then when that is done, they die. And makes you wonder if he had his sights set on one last Easter celebration as Pope before going to meet his Lord and Savior.
Yeah.
So
if there's a perfect ending, that's
it is a perfect
right?
ending. I mean, what a great way for a Pope to go out after doing Easter services. Long life, great life, a life of meaning and impact. And my best wishes, thoughts to Catholics out there. I am Protestant, but thought a lot of Pope Francis, as I know many around the world did.
Yeah, and one of my favorite stories that I heard, and Lily shared this with me, is he was just so humble. He would be in the cafeteria with his little food and stand in line to heat it up in the microwave, just like everybody else. So he's one of those humble servants that will be remembered. Right. Yeah. I didn't realize, I know the sanctity and how serious a process it is. But when I saw the movie Conclave, it really hit home. I don't know if you all saw that, but just really magnificent how they go through the process of picking the next pope.
I really want to see that movie. I'm waiting on it to be on a free streaming service, and then I'll jump on it.
I think it is now. I think it is. I think you can see it on Hulu now. But what a great movie! Yeah, what a great movie. We've had some news come out here in Atlanta the last few hours, and that's Jason Esteves has launched his official campaign for governor on Monday.
I've had enough of families working harder than ever, but still struggling, and our kids falling behind instead of getting ahead. Yet extreme politicians in Georgia push Trump's reckless agenda, rig the system for special interests, and stick us with the bill.
No real surprise. We heard murmurings, before the session ended, but he officially did it.
Yeah, I think this tells us a couple of things. One, to get this out of the way, he has said he wouldn't get in if Stacey Abrams was going to get in, and that he would wait for her and he would bow to her wishes. And him getting in now does tell us that Stacey Abrams is not getting in the race. So that's news indirectly coming out of this. I think Jason is a good voice for Democrats. I will say I'm going to probably go a little easier on him because he's a personal friend. We were in Leadership Georgia together. Our kids go to school together, so we're at a lot of school events together. And he's just a good guy. And that's not a political judgment. That's just, he's a good fellow. Fun to hang out with. His wife is a lovely person as well. And, our kids play on the playground together. So I thought it was interesting because one thing I said to him in the past few months whenever I'd run into him is one advantage you'll have is you're really tall. There's a bias toward tall people in the electorate. And there's a bias toward tall people in the population, and that carries over into the electorate. And I thought it was interesting, having had that conversation, that his rollout video has him on a basketball court running up and down the court, sort of emphasizing this advantage that he has. He is somebody who is telegenic. He's somebody who is smart. I did not know a lot of those details in his bio that were in the video, and they were certainly compelling, coming from a working class family with a father in the military, nobody with a college degree, and then going on to becoming a partner in a law firm and chairman of the Atlanta School Board, a state senator, and an owner of multiple small businesses. certainly is a powerful story. And I think he is also doing what I have recommended right here on Political Breakfast to the Democrats, what I think is the obvious strategy. Don't run against the Kemp record because it's popular. Don't run against the other Republicans because nobody knows too much about them right now. As I always say, all politics now is national. A state level race is really going to be seen through the filter of national politics. So he came out punching at Trump and trying to attach potential opponents to Trump. That is the right strategy. It really is the only strategy. Once that field gets built out, though, he's got to win a primary. And that's going to be where the rub is. He's got to go
That's the
out there
hard
and
part.
prove that he's the most liberal on many issues. And on some of those issues, that might take him outside of the mainstream in a Georgia general election. I mean, he's sitting there talking about Republicans being extreme when his party walked out of a vote to ban taxpayer funded transgender surgeries for state prisoners. So don't talk to me about
You
extremism.
still can't get over that, can you, Brian?
Well, it's just
You just can't get over that.
it just congeals for us in such a succinct way how extreme Democrats are on certain issues and how their base doesn't allow them to use common sense on things where the electorate rejects the extremes of their party. So he's going to have to navigate some of those waters in the Democratic field. And, on the conservative side, on the Republican side, anybody seen as a moderate can't win the nomination. You got to go and prove you're a conservative. For the most part, the one who is seen as most conservative wins. Not always the case, but often the case. You've got to be a proven conservative, that the base trusts you. On the Democrat primary, you got to go and prove you're very liberal or the most liberal. And that's going to cause some tricky decisions for Jason and other candidates, because if he is seen as a moderate, and when you hear him talk, he kind of codes moderate in some way, right? Because he's not
Saba,
he's not angry.
I see.
I'm
I see her
just
reacting to
I'm
you,
just
Brian.
letting
I need to
Brian
get.
go
I need to
on.
get Saba. Yeah, I need to get
Yeah,
Saba in
I'm
this.
sorry.
Saba, what are your thoughts there? And then what do you think this does for Keisha Lance Bottoms? Because she was holding out. She was trying to. We were told that she was trying to get a jump on her announcement, knowing that this Jason Esteves announcement was coming. But we haven't heard anything official yet. What does that do to the mix involving Keisha?
So I ran into Jason Saturday at a autism gala. We talked a little bit about his announcement today and kind of what was next for him. I think Jason's big question as he announces is, how much money can I raise and show I am the most viable candidate on the Democratic side? So that's one. Number two, in his announcement and just broadly, I think what we'll see over the next few weeks from him is distinguishing why he is the right choice for Democrats. So we know that Michael Thurmond is likely to run. We know that Keisha Lance Bottoms is more or less in, although she hasn't gone all the way. And so for him, he has to distinguish why Jason over these other two. And I would push back, Brian, around liberalism. So if you think of the three, Jason, Keisha, and Thurmond, none of them are particularly liberal. Right? Maybe Keisha, I would say, is probably the most liberal of the three. But I don't think that's something that Jason's going to have to worry about. I think a lot of Democrats are looking for sensible, who can beat the Republican, right? If Democrats focus on who can win in November, they will end up picking the right candidate in the primary.
That's the discussion that Tharon and I had here a few weeks ago. Do primary voters go in and vote for who they want to date or who they want to marry, right? And I use that metaphor like, if you're willing, if you just want to have fun, you can pick somebody just to date, and it's going to be somebody who's exciting and get your motor running. When you look at who to marry, you need somebody who can be a long-term choice, somebody who's stable, somebody who makes good decisions. And by that, I mean somebody who can win a general election in this context. So I don't completely buy that primary voters on either side make the electability their top thing. I've heard it tried before in previous cycles, and it just never seems to work better than the right left aspects of this, where you got to go prove you're the most conservative, go prove you're the most liberal. Time will tell. I'm not saying y'all are wrong. I think Democrats would be very smart to calculate, number one, who can win in November, right? And if they do, I think that is the right approach. But the thing is, this is a 50-50 race going into 2026, right? I think
That's
Saba
right.
would agree. The party in the White House always has a bit of a disadvantage, some wind in their face. So Republicans have got to be really strategic. They cannot, and this is something that really concerns me because I hear it amongst my fellow partisans. Well, 2020 was either an aberration or it was stolen. That's what I hear. And in 2022 and 2024, normalcy was restored. The organic Republican majority won once again. All we got to do is put up somebody decent, and we're going to have an advantage. I do not think that's the case. I do think a Democrat can win, particularly if Democrats are smart about who they pick and they don't pick some nut who's more focused on pronouns than on the price of goods and jobs. And the Republicans have got to have somebody who's got a brand beyond Trump. Trump is hugely important. Again, all politics is national. You can't have a lot of daylight between you, but you got to have your own brand. Brian Kemp has done that. He has his own brand outside of Trump's. Really hard for a new candidate to do, but I think a Republican in Georgia to win needs to be trusted by Georgians who don't necessarily trust Trump.
Yeah, you mentioned our Governor Kemp has a busy few weeks ahead. He is expected to sign into law what he has called a top legislative priority, and that is tort reform. And Brian, I don't know, we've talked about this for months and months, so it feels like a long time coming, doesn't it?
It does. And, I tell you one thing that I calculated wrong on, Lisa and Saba, is I thought Republicans had a big enough majority in the House and Senate to where this was not going to be a particularly controversial topic. That maybe was something that Kemp needed to put his shoulder into to get over the line. But I did not predict they would come down to one vote in the House and so many members, including somebody who was the president of a local chamber of commerce, would vote no. So
And lose his job for it.
and lose his job for it. Yeah. And I think that Dr. Michelle Al, a Democrat from the Johns Creek area, may have lost her job in the healthcare office where she works if she hadn't voted yes, right? So I think she did what was right for her in that scenario and for her industry. This will make a difference in Georgia. This is right sizing. This is not extreme. This is not radical. This rebalances the justice system. And this will be judged on whether or not it helps to also recenter insurance prices by bringing marketers back into Georgia to sell insurance products. And if they do, that's going to have a tempering effect on price rises. So, let's wait to judge it on that. I got a text on Friday from a business guy in Savannah saying that his insurance premiums for next year went down 15%. We don't know for sure. That's because of tort reform, which hasn't even taken effect yet. But if we start hearing those kind of stories a lot, then we know that is why, that it has restored faith in the system for insurance companies who aren't scared of runaway verdicts.
Saba, any final thoughts on tort reform?
I think it's a big if, right? So for folks who were against it, I think what they need to be doing is looking at the data, which Brian just alluded to. So if we see a reduction in insurance, perhaps then we can say that this was a success. But we also know that there are thousands of folks who were impacted by this that are not getting the money that should be owed to them because of something that occurred, right? Or they're getting not enough compared to their actual expenses. I'm thinking of people from medical malpractice or other things that may have occurred. And so there's a question about fairness in this. And is this better for big business or is this better for the everyday person?
Yeah, who really stands to benefit? Right. That's still a question in the minds of many out there. Some other legislation being considered, landlord requirements. That's HB 399. And that's one you're a big fan of, Saba.
Yeah, this was one Atlanta Civic Circle was following pretty closely. We've written a lot about institutional investors and the impact that they're having on the rental market across the state, not just in Metro Atlanta. And this was a real opportunity for bipartisan legislation and bipartisan support to address the housing affordability challenge that we have. And so, what this bill did is it required the large landlords to have at least one in person or in state staff person. So, rather than private equity owning stuff from New York or other parts of the country, they have to have at least one person on staff in the state of Georgia that can address some of these challenges that we're seeing.
Yeah, I don't know that I will always agree with Saba on housing policy, but I do think we share the same goals. And I'm not saying
Hmm.
I disagree with Saba. I'm not really quite sure. I'm not an expert on the issue, and she is, and I defer to her on those. But I do think very strongly that the housing affordability and availability is one of the pressing issues over the next generation in the state. We have not kept up with the demand that has soared prices, and we've got to have a place for not only working class Georgians, but middle class Georgians to live. It's not just people who work in blue collar professions, it's people who work in professional jobs, white collar jobs. It's really hard to find affordable housing. It's eating up too much of our income. We need to build. And that's going to take some leadership at the top to make sure that we have zoning that allows us to build.
That's right, Brian. I think that's the next iteration, right? So that's something that we're looking to see what happens in 26. But this bill, House Bill 399, only 5 folks voted against it in the House, right? Just to give you a sense of just how much bipartisan support
That's
there was
great.
for it.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's very rare. Yeah, for sure.
that's right.
Another one talked about the past waiting signatures. The one, girls sports bars transgender student athletes from participating in girls and women's sports. A lot of talk about that this session, and that too is waiting his signature.
That's right. And I do think that, they handled a lot of these transgender issues this year. I don't think it's something that they want to work on, you know, forever into the future, but they did need to take a stand here and just sort of get us back to a place of common sense. But the left is saying that the Republicans are focusing on these issues to the detriment of other meaningful bills on healthcare, housing. That's not true. It was a session of consequence and meaningful bills. And, doing one isn't to the exclusion of the other. But the only reason why Republicans have had to take on these issues, which voters feel very strongly about, this is not something where it's a 51-49 issue. Georgians overwhelmingly support what Republicans did this session, and Democrats shouldn't lose sight of that. Instead of doing walkouts, they should just be kind of quiet about this and move on. Realize that their party went a little too far on these things and just kind of move on to the next thing.
Did any of these others pique your interest? Either of you? Personal device ban in schools,
I like that.
IVF.
I tell you, I have an 8-year-old, and she gets her mom's phone at dinner, and you can't talk to her. Right? You can like be yelling in her ear, and she's so zoned out that
Wow.
you can't communicate with her. And so if a kid is on a phone or they have access to that, we're addicted to phones. I'm not even like attacking these kids. If they
I
have a
know a
phone,
phone
of course
number.
they want to have
Yeah.
it in their hand and be playing games or texting with their friends or whatever it is they do.
Yeah.
So of course it's going to be a distraction. Of course it's going to keep kids from learning. I understand the parents who think this is a security challenge. I am empathetic to that. It makes me angry that that is the case. It shouldn't be. Kids should be safe at school. But I just think that if you look at the odds of them getting in a dangerous situation, even as much more prevalent today than they were when I was growing up, they're still minorly low compared to the odds of not learning anything during the school day because you're on your phone. So I think we've got to do something about the loss of focus and attention in this country. And yeah, I think my generation probably it's too late for us. Even though we're late adapters, we're not digital natives like kids are today. But we kids can't live on their phones. We've got to make that much more normal than it is today.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Brian. And it's not just kids, to what you alluded to. It's all of us, right?
Yes.
We're all too addicted.
We're all addicted.
We all need to be banned, don't we? Yeah,
I know. I was watching last night. I was watching one of the recent Handmaid's Tales episodes, and I was on my iPad, just like randomly scrolling through emails as I'm watching TV, right? And that's like my norm. But the parents who are saying that it's unsafe for their kid to not have a phone in class, these parents more than likely did not grow up having a phone in the classroom themselves, right? And so you think about, they survived. They survived just fine. You think about just how much time you spend on the phone, right? I got, you get your alert once a week on Apple at least of like, oh, Saba, you spent 8 hours a day, right, on your device. But Jonathan Chait is a really brilliant writer who has addressed this issue. And this is, again, something where I think there could be really bipartisan support about how are we protecting kids, protecting their attention spans, protecting their ability to think critically. All of those things are related to cell phone use and technology in general.
Totally. I work for myself. I'm a one-man business, so I don't have an assistant who can screen stuff for me. But if I did, if I did have that structure, I think one thing I would like to do for my own mental health and focus, because I do the same thing as you, Saba, particularly when I'm watching sports, where you don't have to be tuned in every second, right? I'm reading during that time. Yeah, or scrolling, whatever. And I would love to be in a spot in my life where I can put my phone down. I've noticed that my parents are now in their 70s and retired. Like, they used to be fairly quick about responding on text. Now they're much slower. And I think it's because they can put it down and walk away from it without having a heart attack. And I think that's probably a healthy place to be.
That's my dad. If I need to reach my dad, I call my mom.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, getting these alerts on our phones here.
See, look at that.
Yeah, exactly. Case in
Can't
point.
put them down. Interrupt political breakfast. Oh my gosh. We're going to wrap it up here this time, but later this week we're going to talk about international student visa hearing that's taking place in Atlanta this week and what that really means in the scheme of things. So we'll pick up there later in the week, and glad that you checked in with us today. Saba, as always, thank you so much for filling in, and Brian, we'll all talk again soon.
Yep.
That's him.